Well, welcome back in for Seek, Gather, Create Week 3 for all the details on what Seek, Gather, Create, the Scavenger Hunt Challenge. Down below in my description box, I will have all the information for you down there. This week's items to gather were Wings, Something Tall, Watercolor, Color in Glittery Gold. And as you can see, I have a bunch of stuff pulled out, but I'm not sure, and I can tell you in hindsight that I don't use all of these. So, and I use some, but I don't use all of these. And so we'll get into what is going to happen onto the surface of this layout. And I'm going to be starting with collage. So that is where I'm getting started.
Your best kept secrets underground. Your hand on my chest, my heart beats for you. I keep my arms out and hold you like before. We can fly away from here. We can stay close, my dear, swept up and away from all our fears. How are we supposed to know on our own? Together we can go slow. Why don't you leave it all to me? I know how hard it all can be. I'm here to hold your hand through this. I'll be beside you all along. My love for you is so strong. We're right where we belong. Together we can go slow.
Usually after collage, I usually come in with some white gesso, but I'm kind of changing it up a little bit. I'm coming in with this new hand-cut net stencil from Julie Fan-Fei, Balzer, and TCW. I do have this in my shop, but I will, as per usual, always have all the products I use listed down below for you. I'm going to come in with this, and along with that, I am going to be using a different combination of items. I'm going to be using the TCW stencil butter in Champagne Gold, along with the Ranger or Tim Holtz Distress Grit Paste in Snowfall. And I'm going to push both of those together, not mixed together necessarily, but like side by side together through this stencil onto the layout. now going to come in with that TCW white gesso. Again, with my fingers, I prefer to use my fingers for this. I like to feel the texture. I have already gotten the background all dried, and I'm coming in really lightly, and then I'm going to come in again after it's had a chance to dry a little bit and build up that white in specific areas. That gives me kind of a misty feel almost, and I love how texture looks when there's a little bit of gesso that dried on the surface of it, and then once you add color later on, it does fantastic things. So I've pulled out a handful of color buttons. These are watercolor color buttons from Masha's Watercolors. I'll list her below. Her granulating watercolors are my favorite, and I've been trying to use these up before I purchase them anymore because they're just worth using all up. And I'm not sure which colors I'm going to be using, so I just put water on all of them, and then I make decisions as I'm going. And I also think it's important to note that at the point that I was using the gesso, I was starting to get an idea of getting an idea of how I wanted to handle that right panel. And you'll see that with that gesso, I was actually going beyond the page onto the back cover, the inside of the back cover with that gesso, and that was really purposeful. And you'll see I do the same thing with the watercolor.
Blue is the sky, like the color of your eyes. Blue is your heart. It's been like that from the start. Say you'll stay till the morning light. I'll help you through the fight. Let's make footprints.
So my idea was to use some kind of fabric sandwiched between the right hand page of my layout and the inside of the back cover. And I knew I wanted some kind of lace or something, some fabric peeking out. And so I pulled out my whole huge bin of fabric and found this doily. I forgot all about it. And it has this real lacy stuff all around the edges, a lot of it. And I thought that would be perfect. And I decided I was going to go ahead and adhere it and sandwich the panel together using the PowerTex Universal Medium in the matte translucent. And so that's what I pulled out, and I got it all stirred up, and I'm just using a brush that I have set aside for universal mediums, and putting it all getting it cut down, the doily cut down, and getting it all sandwiched in there. I really like how that ended up turning out. Universal Medium is a textile hardener as well as an adhesive, and if you want to learn more about the Universal Medium, I'll put a link to a video in the upper right hand corner for you.
There's no need to hesitate. Let's make footprints in the sand. Sometimes we act like a fool, not aware we're troublemakers. Sometimes we try to be cool, not being givers, only takers.
And while I had the universal medium out and I had some of that leftover lace, I decided I was gonna take the pieces and all kind of mesh them together and use that universal medium on it and set it aside to dry, because that will be really cool and it'll harden it, and possibly it could become part of the focal point, whatever that ends up being. So I decided to go ahead and do that while I had it out, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm using one of those thin plastic disposable cutting plastic pieces. I have them specifically to use with my PowerTex products, and I've just laid the lace on it and it'll peel right up once it's dried. All right, it's time to work on a focal point, and at this point I already have watercolor and I've already have glittery gold of the scavenger items. So now I need to work on wings and something tall. And out of all the wings I had out, I decided to use these beautiful butterfly wings. So I'm gonna trim it up closer. These are die cuts that I bought from Wow Studio, and I'm gonna trim them up closer, kind of fussy cut it closer in and take off the antennae. At that point, I think that I need to do some distressing on the edges. It has a real sharp, stark white edge to it. So I'm coming in with the Distress ink and Scorch Timber and going to, with a finger dauber, just distress up the edges of that a little bit. Give it a little bit more dimension so it'll pop off the page. So I decided to go ahead and use this Tim Holtz Ideology paper doll that was sitting on the edge of my table. And it's interesting because I had two items sitting on my table that I used both of them in this layout, and this little gal was one of those. I wanted to see if she, like, as I was looking at her, I was thinking she might fit on this butterfly with these big old wings. Sure enough, she did. So I'm pulling off, these are really thick, and I find that they just add a lot of bulk. So I'm taking off about half of the cardboard that she's printed onto just to thin her up a little bit so she's not too bulky on the page. And then I'm going to get her glued down onto those wings. I noticed that I took some of my matte gel medium and put it on top of her, and it's because these paper dolls are very glossy and I don't like that. So I just use that matte gel medium since it's translucent already and will make her matte. I just added some of that to the surface of her as well as I was gluing her down.
Fly away from here. We can stay close, my dear. Swept up and away from all our fears. How are we supposed to know on our own? Together we can go slow. Why don't you leave it all?
So now I'm going to kind of audition her with the lace that I used the hardener on, and it needed a little bit of additional help to get dry, so I did do that. And then I'm going to see how I want to put her on this, and it ends up needing to be trimmed down a little bit, I felt, and so I do that. And once I make the kind of decision on which page I'm going to put her and the composition of that lace piece and my little fairy girl, I am going to bring in my last seeked item, the last scavenger item, which is something tall. And for this is funny because that was the first thing I thought of when I went to go scavenge my items together. And that is this natural piece of bamboo out of Crafty Hope's backyard. And she gifted me with a handful of these beautiful natural bamboo. And yep, I do leave it very tall coming off that page. I had to cut it down a little bit. I had to use some finesse in getting it glued onto the page, but I was so pleased with it, and it has this little piece of wraparound growth on it. I'm not quite sure if that was from another plant, but I loved it and I left it.
I'll be beside you all along. My love for you is so strong. We're right where we belong.
Have my little lady drawing over on the side. I am going to work on some words, and like I said, there was 2 items on my table that I found, and this was a fortune that I had just recently received, and from a fortune cookie. I don't know. And it matched the letters were like this pinkish red, and so I knew it would match, and it was calling to me. So I trimmed that down and get that adhered to the page. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your presence here on my channel. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I do answer those.